Happy Advent of Cyber, Day 17, everybody. My name is Neil Bridges from the Cyber and Security channel, bringing you a walkthrough for Task 22, Elf Leaks. In this walkthrough, we're going to be looking at how to interact with Amazon Web Services S3 buckets to find information. Let's get to it. Before we get to it, I want you to know this one's probably a bit longer than the last one. So I have used timestamp features in YouTube to give you an easy to navigate places based on the questions in this challenge. Hopefully you'll find this helpful. Before we begin, I do want to highlight that the TryHackMe team has populated this challenge with a lot of background information on Amazon services, S3 buckets, and identity and access management. I would highly encourage you to read through this information, as there are some hidden nuggets that will help you with today's challenge. One of the first things that we start off with is this concept of shadow IT. And it really talks about public cloud being an easy way for business units to engage in the act of shadow IT. Now, for those who don't know, shadow IT is the existence of information technology assets that circumvent normal IT processes like standard configurations, asset management, even a lot of the standard processes in procurement, legal, etc. And due to the prevalence of cloud services like AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, it makes it super easy for business units to stand up infrastructure to support their business needs without any of the involvement of IT. Now, let's get into the challenge, shall we? Okay, now for today's challenge. Somehow the Grinch has managed to get a hold of all the elves' names and email addresses. How could this have happened? Given the scope of the breach, McSkitty believes someone in HR must have been involved. You know that HR recently launched a new portal site using WordPress. You also know that HR didn't request any infrastructure from IT to deploy its portal site. Where is this portal hosted? Let's see if we can't figure it out. Here's the image HR sent out announcing the new website, this one right here. New portal for all your HR needs. This is all we're given, right? So based on that, how can you figure out how the Grinch got access to the employees database? Since we know that this is an S3 bucket, let's start with this image and let's right click on it and open image in new tab. When we open the image in new tab, you can see the image here, but you can also see the URL listed here. And so just like we learned up here in the top, in discovering bucket names, you can see that this is what our URL looks like here. And so our bucket name is going to be in between these two brackets right here. Coming back over here, simply look here. This is our bucket name. We can copy this over, come down here. What is the name of the S3 bucket? Use the host the HR website announcement. Paste that there, submit, and we got the answer correct. Awesome. That one was super easy, right? Let's move on. Now the next one is, what is the message left in the flag.txt object from that bucket? Now there's a couple different ways that we can demonstrate how to get to this. So first and foremost, from the image we just pulled up over here, we can simply remove the flyer.png from the URI string, hit carriage return, and you can see that we return an XML sheet that has all of the information that is actually included in the S3 bucket. And so you can actually see the flag.txt that's listed there. There is another way that we can view the contents of this S3 bucket, and that is via the command line interface. Now, in this case, I'm using Windows Subsystem for Linux on Windows 11. You can use a Kali box, you can use Ubuntu, you can use the TryHackMe attack boxes, really anything that you do happen to have the AWS command line interface tools installed on. And it works very similar to if you were to do a listing of a directory in Linux that you're so familiar with. You simply invoke the AWS commands from the AWS CLI tools. You tell it you want to connect to an S3 bucket. You tell it you want to list the directories that are, or list the files that are included in that S3 bucket, and then you need to give it a location. In this case, we're going to give it the location, which is the S3 bucket name from the previous challenge, and we're going to tell it that in the no sign request, we want this to be just an anonymous request. We don't really need to authenticate this in any way. Hit carriage return, wait a little while, and you can see that we come back with a list of all the files that are listed in the S3 bucket. So on the left-hand side, you can see how we can do it with a web browser. On the right-hand side, you can see how we do it with the command line interface. Really, though, what we're trying to do here for this challenge is we need to know what message was left in the flag.txt object from that bucket. So over here on the left-hand side in our browser version, you can see that we have flag.txt here. We simply amend flag.txt to our URI string up at the top. And you can see that we have the message from the else. We could also, over here on our command line infrastructure, you can see that I have already created a directory here called AWS. We can simply also bring down the flag.txt by simply invoking our AWS command, S3. We can copy using very similar Linux commands to what we're used to before. The S3 bucket, the location of the S3 bucket. And then we can say that we also would like to get the flag.txt. We use dot because we need a location that we're going to copy it locally. No sign request. Hit enter. We wait a little bit as we're waiting for it to go out there, talk to the S3 bucket, bring the flag back. We can see that it has retrieved flag.txt. Cat that. We have our phrase. So we can copy our phrase here, bring it back over here, put the message in here, submit, and we got our answer correct. Awesome. 2 down, more to go. Now, number 3 is, what other file in that bucket looks interesting to you? Well, that is one of the things that we always love to do when we look at S3 buckets, is we love to look at other interesting files. So when you look through this on the left-hand side, when you look through the web browser, you can see that this is the name of the bucket right here. And this is listed as contents. And so the key value that's listed here are the names of the files that are listed inside the bucket. So we have a DS store, we have an image, we have another image, we have another image, we have our flag.txt from before. We have another image, we have another JPEG, we have another image, and then, oh, look down here at the bottom, we have wp-backup.zip. And we know from the challenge that we know that the HR team used WordPress for this, so this is probably some WordPress backup file. Awesome. That's definitely an interesting file that we would love to take a look at, because there's lots of juicy information inside of a WordPress backup file. Copy that, bring it over here, submit. Answer is correct on that one. Awesome. Another one bites the dust. Cool. Let's go over here now and let's pull down that WordPress backup file. So you can see we have a directory here. It's simply got our flag.txt. We can use our command again, same one that we used before, but this time instead of pulling down flag.txt, we want to pull down WordPress backup.zip. Wait for that to pull down. Awesome. There it goes. It is downloaded. Verify. We see WP backup. We see WP backup.zip listed up there at the top. We can do an unzip. WP backup.zip. We can change directories to WP backup. Awesome. And you can see that we have all of the contents of the WordPress backup file listed there. If you caught that, if you didn't catch that, if it's too fast for you, make sure you take a few minutes, rewind that video, watch those steps again. We simply use the AWS command to pull down the WordPress backup. We then used an unzip command to unzip the zip file and bring it over into our local machine here locally. Okay, awesome. Now, it says, what is the AWS access key ID in that file? Now, hopefully you read up at the top, like you were supposed to, where it talks about here, AWS Identity and Access Management. And you see that it talks about IAM access keys. Specifically, it mentions that access key IDs begin with the letters AKAI and are 20 characters long. Okay, so that gives us something to search for, because as you can tell in our WordPress file, we have a lot of stuff that we need to go through over on our WordPress side. Now, there's a couple different ways you can do this. If you've happened to work a ton with WordPress, you can simply look at this and say, oh, well, I know that there is a ton of information inside of wp-config.php. but maybe you haven't worked a ton with WordPress. And so how do you actually go about looking for looking for content inside of files? This is where we use a fancy, little, command called grep. Now you can do this a couple of different ways. You can iterate through the directories. There's a number of ways that you could do this. You could script this out in Bash. One of the ways that I usually just start with, just to kind of see if it's right here, is I'll do a cat splat, pipe it to a grep, and then I'll look for AKAI. Now what it's doing is it's going to take every flat file that's here and it's going to cat all of them. Basically put it all into buffer, and then it's going to grep those flat files looking for the string in case sensitive format AKIA, because we know that is the format that is prefaced for any of our AWS access key IDs. We hit enter, and lo and behold, we can see that we probably move this up. There we go. So you can see that. Awesome. You can see here that it did indeed find a file in this directory that did contain S3 uploads with our AKIA ID file. So again, we know that comes from wp-config. So another way that we could do this is we can less wp-config.php. We get the entire PHP file. It's a little command foo, do a search for AKIA, and you can see we have all of the defines listed right here. This is awesome. Typically what I like to do when I come across information like this is I love to copy it and throw it over into a notepad. That way I've got it for future reference. That way I don't need to reference it at any point in time in the future. And so with this, we know now that this is our string that we're looking for here. What is our AWS access key ID file? Paste that in there, submit, and we got the answer correct. There is indeed a hint here for this one. It talks about curling versus doing it the way that I did it. Again, multiple ways to solve the challenge. Using the AWS CLI tools, I find to be the most effective way to interact with S3 buckets. Now, the next question is, what is the AWS account ID that access keys work for? So again, we can go back up here to the top, and we can see that it talks about all the different ways for us to interact with the AWS infrastructure via the AWS identity and access management tools built into the AWS CLI. It talks about taking the credentials once you're finding them and creating an AWS profile that you can then use with your AWS CLI tools to better interact with AWS buckets. And so that's actually what we're going to do right now. Okay, we'll quit this. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do AWS configure. We're going to create a profile, and we're going to call it HR. Now, this is going to walk us through a little bit of a wizard, and it's going to ask us for the information that we just saw from the previous screen. So I happen to have it in my notepad over here on my other monitor. It wants the AWS access key ID. So we're going to pull this access key ID from over here. We'll paste it here. It's then going to ask us for the secret access key, which again, we got from the previous screen. We'll copy that, paste it here. It's going to ask for the default region. And again, that was included in our previous screen as well. Now for default output format, I leave that as none. No real need to change that for this particular challenge. Awesome. How do we know that it worked, right? We just put in a whole bunch of information. Do we actually know that it actually did store that? There's an easy way to check that out. We can simply go back up to our top level directory. You can see that we have a directory called .aws here. And you can see that we have two files, config and credentials. We can cat config and we can cat credentials. And you can see that it has stored the information that we just used during the AWS config. Okay, so you can see that the challenge is, what is the AWS account ID that access key works for? Luckily enough, you can see that we are given up here at the top the command that we need to do to check that. So we use AWS sts get access key info -- access key ID. Now, in this case, you are going to need to provide it where it says AKIA example. You will provide it the AKIA example listed there. Now, what the tutorial does not show you, and what it does expect you to infer, is that you do need to, similar to what is happening down here with the -- profile, is that you do need to give it a profile that is associated with what you just created. So you can see here, using that command, we then get an account ID. We can then scroll down here. We can copy this account ID here, paste it there, submit, and you can see that our answer is correct. Awesome, we are on the right track. Now it's asking us, what is the username for that particular access key? Now, again, as the guide has, it actually helps us to determine the username using this command listed here as number 2. So we can head back over to our CLI, run AWS, STS, get caller identity, -- profile, HR. And you can see listed here under the ARN, it says the user, and you can see that this is the user account here. Boom, answer is correct. Now, there is an EC2 instance in that account. Under the tags, what is the name of that instance? As you can imagine, there is indeed another command to help us out. This one right here, listing all the EC2 instances running on an account. So we can come over here, AWS EC2, describe instances. Output is in text format, and we use the profile HR. And you can see here that we get a ton of output information on that particular EC2 instance. So let's scroll down here and let's see what it's asking us for. It wants to know that under the tags, what is the name of that instance? And so if we scroll through here, we can look at a lot of the different fields that are being provided to us from Amazon about this particular EC2 instance. You can see tags listed down here at the bottom. Tags are a quick way for folks to reference the information in their infrastructure when they're trying to manage large, amounts of AWS infrastructure. You can see that there is a list of tags with a name on it that says HR portal. So again, this kind of proves to us that we are indeed on the right track. So let's copy and let's paste that one over there. Submit. Boom, we got that one done. Awesome. Now on for the final and one of the harder challenges of this one. The final challenge says, what is the database password stored in Secrets Manager? Now, if you actually scroll back up to the top, you can see there's no real mention of Secrets Manager. And this is where they want you to put on that critical thinking hat and dive just a little deeper into the challenge. So what I'm going to include in the description in the video below is a link to this Amazon document titled Creating and Retrieving Secrets. This is going to be very key for you to understand what exactly is going on behind the hint that is provided. So if we head back over here, you can see that the hint says AWS CLI commands for Secrets Manager can be found by running the AWS Secrets Manager help. Awesome. So let's take a look at that. Head back over here. We can say AWS Secrets Manager help. This looks very similar to what you would expect to see in any old man page. It talks about what it is, the description, everything about this particular command. But if you actually scroll down a little bit more, it actually brings you to a list of available commands. And so this is where we want to kind of draw our attention to, right? Because when we look at this, we can then start to say, okay, well, if I'm going to play with Secrets Manager, I should start to be familiar with maybe some of the commands and at least some of the commands that I want to run. So looking through this list, obviously we're trying to discover what the database password is. First thing I think I would want to start with is this list-secrets. With that, we can then run our AWS Secrets Manager list secrets, and then we'll do it for the profile that we're in. So what we're asking him to do is we're asking AWS to use its Secrets Manager. We want to list all the secrets that are currently being stored for this particular profile that we're impersonating on AWS. Boom, just like that. Cool. We've got a list of secrets that are actually listed here. This is actually pretty awesome. Okay, cool. So we're looking at the ARN, we've got the name, which is the HR password. So this is basically a JSON return value that kind of indicates what's being stored inside the credential manager for this. One of the other things, so if we go back over here to our tutorial, and I'll kind of blow this up so you can see it, this is the retrieve your secret from AWS secrets. You can see that this is what we're trying to do here, where we're trying to get secret value from a secret ID that's listed here. So let's give that a try. In this particular case, the secret ID is listed here underneath the name, HR password, listed right here. Okay, so what does that look like? So we're going to run AWS Secrets Manager, get secret value, secret ID, HR password, and then we're going to use, of course, our profile. Boom, you can see that we have now asked the secrets manager to get the secret value for the secret ID of HR password, which is what we got before from the list secrets command, using our current profile that we're impersonating to basically use that as our authentication. And you can see that we are given the secret, the HR password, and that's what's listed here in the secret string. We come back over here and we look and say, what is the database password stored in Secrets Manager? Well, the secret string is, oh no, the secret you're looking for is not in this region. Santa wants to have low latency to his databases. You need to look closer to where he lives. Tricky, tricky, tricky. So I wonder, what region should we use to try to figure out where Santa lives? Now, you can go to Amazon, you can search for all the AWS regions. You can definitely write a script that would allow you to iterate through all the regions. But one of the hints that, you know, is kind of missing from this one is you've noticed that we've been able to use the -- profile to talk about this particular authentication. There is another -- command that you can use to kind of help you through this as well. Now, again, you can kind of iterate through everything else if you really, really wanted to. You could iterate through all the regions, but in this particular case, we can just kind of shortcut it. We can use the -- region command here, and we can directly specify a particular region. In this case, we'll do EU North #1. And you can see the secret string here that's being stored in the credential manager in the region of EU North #1 is winter 2021. Let's copy that. And there we go. We have it correct. That was a fun challenge. And given the rise in importance of S3 buckets and their security and the amount of hacks that we've had around S3, you can now see how easy it is to kind of go out there and test those S3 buckets so that you